Good evening. Welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. I'm Ed Henry filling in tonight. Tucker will be back tomorrow, and let me tease that you will get to see a bit of him later tonight. For now, I'm practicing my Tucker face, or the Tuck look, as viewers like to call it. But first, President Trump's critics said his wall could never work. Well, the wall hasn't even been built yet, but the mere talk of one may be having a big impact already. A new report says that illegal crossings at the Mexican border dropped, big league, as the president might say, during his first month in office. In 60 seconds, we'll debate someone who doesn't think the president really deserves credit. But right now, we go live to our own Trace Gallagher, who's crunching the illegal border crossing numbers. Good to see you, Trace.
Good to see you, Ed. The Department of Homeland Security says the 40% drop in the number of illegal immigrants trying to cross the border in February is even more remarkable when you consider that historically, border crossings in February rise by up to 20%. Look at the actual numbers here. In January, 31,578 people were apprehended trying to cross the southern border. In February, it dropped to 18,762. That is the lowest monthly total in at least 5 years. And it also appears there was an all-out rush to get into the U.S. before Donald Trump's executive orders on immigration. Because in the 3 months prior to the inauguration, border agents apprehended 157,000 illegal immigrants. That's up 35% from the previous year. Then, as soon as Trump took office, apprehensions plummeted. Customs and Border Protection says this is good news for those who did not try to cross the border because they didn't put themselves and their families at risk of, quote, exploitation, assault, and injury by human traffickers and the physical dangers of the treacherous journey north. Human traffickers, by the way, have increased their fees more than 100% in just the past 14 months. Ed.
Trace, thank you. We'll see you later this hour. So it's only 1 month, but it appears that illegal immigration dropped. So why is our first guest so reluctant to give President Trump some credit? Alex Nowrasteh is an immigration policy analyst for the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank. He joins us live. So repeat after me. Some good news.
It is some news. The president.
You said some news. Some good news.
It's some news. I mean, it's good and bad. We don't. It's
illegal immigration went down.
Yeah, but it might be for various reasons that are good or bad. It could be that the economy is not attracting them enough, which is bad news for the American economy.
But less illegals are coming to America.
Right. Yeah.
Good news.
Sure.
Okay,
yeah, absolutely.
Good.
But it depends why it's going on. Is it going on because we've spent a lot more money at the border over the last couple decades and we're wasting a lot of money on more border bureaucrats? Or has it gone down because the U.S. economy isn't attracting them anymore? That could be bad.
So let's get to that. So before the inaugural, as you heard Trace report, fair and balanced, he had the facts. Before the inauguration of Donald Trump, there was a surge of people trying to get across the border, illegals trying to get to America. They were afraid of Donald Trump building the wall and his rhetoric, right?
There was also a surge prior to the election going on in the first place. Remember the numbers? Well, the numbers throughout 2016 were above those of 2015, and the numbers in 2015
were we'll get to those.
I
promise I'll let you make all those points. Let's just talk about the actual question I asked you.
Yeah.
Before the inaugural, there was a surge in illegals trying to get across the border before Donald Trump took office. True?
Yes, that's true.
Okay, so they were afraid that he was actually going to crack down on it.
Well, as I said, the surge
I'll let you go back to 2015, but let's talk about the reality.
Before the election even occurred, and it continued after the election occurred.
But again, I just want to establish.
Trying to say that it's attributable entirely to Donald Trump, I think, is ignoring the fact.
I didn't say entirely. I said it was good news that illegal immigration has started to drop.
Yeah, and I agree with you about that, of course.
Okay, and so fast forward month one of the Trump administration, all of a sudden, Trace says, in terms of apprehensions at the border, it's the lowest total in 5 years.
It's actually the lowest total in 17 years when you take a look at the months going back to the year 2000. It is, of course, only 1 month, and it's been 1 month since the president.
And it can change, because you're right about that point.
Well, yeah, 1 month.
It's only 1 month. But in 1 month, you're saying it's even better than Trace said. You're saying that it's the lowest total of apprehensions at the border, meaning less people trying to cross, getting caught trying to cross, in 17 years. So that's good news.
It is. Recall, of course, during
Donald Trump's policy is starting to work?
Not necessarily. He hasn't really had much time. It's a lot of rhetoric. There was an increase in the number of illegals coming across before he came in. So we'll see how that average shakes up over the period of time. A lot of people realize that I think that President Trump's bark is worse than his bite, and I think we're going to see the numbers increase going forward.
But maybe his bark is actually having an impact.
It might, but a lot of the big decreases and the decrease in the number of asylum seekers from Central and South America, mainly children and women who are trying to seek asylum who are counted as apprehended. And if they're being turned away, then there's a lot of other problems.
We don't know for sure. You're saying
well, no. You can take a look at the numbers when you dig into the numbers of people who are apprehended. It has unaccompanied alien children and the family units listed there. And there's a much bigger drop in those individuals than there are in adults who are coming by themselves.
But here's my problem with your approach. I went back and looked at what you said during the presidential transition before we got these numbers. And it seems that you're so anti-Trump that you wouldn't. Here's what you said in November. You said to the Associated Press Television, quote, he's doubling down on all of his anti-immigrant positions. Let's stop there. He's not against legal immigration.
Did you not read his position paper?
He's not against legal immigration.
In his position paper, he said he wanted to cut the number of green cards down to 0 until unemployment is 0 in the United States. And if you take a look at his other positions against the H-1B visa,
he might want to bring that down, but then he wants legal immigrants to come in.
Let me finish. If you follow through all of the positions that he wants to take in his position paper to cut legal immigration by 63%.
I'm just saying, why not be accurate and say his anti-illegal immigration
Because he wants to cut legal immigration by 63%.
Maybe in the short term, but
if President Trump said he wanted to cut legal gun ownership by 63%, you'd say he was anti-gun, which I would say too. So if he wants to cut legal immigration by 63%, I think it's fair to say that he's anti-immigration.
The next sentence you said to the Associated Press is, quote, this is in November, he wants to massively increase immigration enforcement at the border.
Yes.
Okay, and we've got the quote up there. What's wrong with increasing enforcement at the border of our existing laws?
Because there's a lot cheaper and easier ways to get enforcement with the laws that doesn't require hiring 5,000 more border agents. Such as what President Eisenhower did in the 1950s of increasing the number of temporary short-term guest worker visas to channel these people into the legal market so we can check them out.
You're telling me that we haven't improved the system since Eisenhower to come up with a way to better use Border Patrol agents, though, if you actually send them to the border?
Oh, in terms of the enforcement ability of the U.S. government on the border, it is a lot better than it used to be, but there's also 20 times as many as there were during Eisenhower's administration, and we're not getting much.
But you said in November, he wants, as if it was a bad thing, he wants to massively increase immigration enforcement at the border. So it looks like it's actually working. He wanted to do that. You said it was a horrible thing in November,
he hasn't done it
and
yet.
The numbers are coming down.
As you said, he hasn't done it yet. He hasn't had the ability to increase the border
He's just started.
yet.
He's talked about it. He's sending people there.
You can't say that he's done it and that he hasn't done it yet.
You said in November this is a horrible thing.
It is a bad thing.
How is it a bad thing if illegal immigration is now going down?
We could get the same results much cheaper by not hiring more government employees and unionized government employees and taking 1,000 miles of private property along the border through eminent domain to build a wall, by increasing legal short-term temporary migration to allow people to come through the legal market. It's about deregulating the economy.
So now you're
That's what Eisenhower did, and that's what worked.
But again, a lot has changed since Eisenhower. But nonetheless, if your issue is really cost and you want to save government money now, all of a sudden. Okay, so
all of a sudden, excuse me, I'm a libertarian. I work at a libertarian think tank. We are very much concerned with decreasing the size of government.
So you do want to decrease the size of the government?
Across the board, including the massive and bloated immigration bureaucracy that clogs the border.
So if cost is the issue, I'm just confused about why you are against the idea that, like, Donald Trump hasn't even built the wall. He's talked about it. And illegal immigration is coming down without spending a dime on the wall.
That's one of the best things about it, but...
So that's a good thing.
Yeah, his talk...
So why are you criticizing basically his entire approach when you say part of your deal is to decrease the cost of and the size and cost of government without even building a single plank in the wall? Illegal immigration appears to be coming down.
For 1 month.
He hasn't spent a penny on that.
For 1 month, and we're going to see what happens going forward. As you said in the beginning of this segment, we're going to see what happens after this month. But he says he wants to spend tens of billions of more dollars
and you're right, it's 1 month.
Immigration.
It went down 40%. It didn't go down 5% or 6%. It went down 40%.
There are almost 12 million illegal immigrants in the United States currently. 70% are entering legally and overstaying. This is a drop in the bucket. And let's not forget that during Barack Obama's administration, the number of illegal immigrants entering each year dropped by over 67%. And it was the first administration in history where the number of illegal immigrants at the end of it was the same as the beginning.
All right, Alex, we'll have to have you back when we get the second month statistics to see if it's still going down.
We'll see. I hope we're going to have a lot more than a few more months to check it out.
We made progress because you said it is good news that illegal immigration is down. You didn't say it initially, but you eventually got there.
Well, no, it's good news, but it also depends why it's happening. Is it because the U.S. economy is about to enter a recession, or is it because we're spending a lot more money on the border, or is it because we have a windbag in office who says a lot of nonsense?
Wait a second, a windbag? How do you just take a cheap shot like that?
Well, Well, you can't.
What do you say to Winbeck?
The president has
he
been
is using this
saying
rhetoric,
type of stuff
and
for a
illegal
long
immigration
time.
has actually come down. And that's how you want to address the president of the United States.
The president, during his entire time talking
do you
about
want
this,
to take that back, or do you just want to?
The president's taken every position possible in immigration throughout his career. I think it's fair to call that.
But it's come down. And you won't fully acknowledge that, and you decide to just throw a cheap shot at him.
I've said that he deserves. I said he deserves a lot of the credit for it. What do you want?
Okay, a lot of the credit, but you still call him that.
Well, when you take every position possible on an issue, I think that's what you deserve to be called.
Okay, Alex, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
There was even more turmoil in the intelligence community today. FBI Director James Comey briefed the House Intelligence Committee on President Trump's claim he was wiretapped by President Obama. Meanwhile, WikiLeaks announced, yes, it will share leaked CIA hacking tools with tech companies. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Harris joins us with more. Catherine, quite a day.
It was, Ed. Thank you. The FBI director briefed the congressional leadership tonight on the Russia investigation. Earlier today, Fox News was told the allegations Trump Tower was wiretapped would be dealt with. The House and Senate leadership, as well as the chairman and ranking members of the Congressional Intelligence Committees, left the briefing without speaking to reporters. And in another indicator that the issue is politically charged, Democrats had accused Director Comey of withholding evidence, a charge not made by senior Republicans. Also today, a high-level Oval Office meeting was scheduled with the president, CIA Director Mike Pompeo, and Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly. The expectation is that WikiLeaks and the apparent breach of the CIA cyber unit were on the table, as well as a preliminary damage assessment. The head of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, held a news conference today where he offered to help tech firms defeat the CIA's hacking tools. But tonight, none of the big tech firms seem to be taking up the offer, Ed.
Catherine, do you think it's a genuine offer to help these tech companies, or I mean, WikiLeaks has a mixed track record,
right.
to say the least.
Within the IC, I think they would see it this way. It's like getting stabbed in the back, and then the person offers to drive you to the hospital. Okay, so it's a little twisted, but listen, Julian Assange has a point with the documents, if they're authentic, which is that the U.S. government really has some awesome surveillance capabilities.
What's your sense of this investigation and James Comey going up to the Hill, talking about this back and forth with President Obama and President Trump?
Well, this really puts the FBI director under the microscope. I have to say, one of the things that caught my attention today, having followed this really for over a year, is that when we look at the documents, we see there are these incredible capabilities to record audio and video, and to use this with phones and with computers. And what we saw with our ongoing reporting, along with my colleague, senior executive producer Pamela Brown, is that the Clinton campaign on a number of occasions took these kinds of devices into secure facilities. So that's yet another vulnerability. Yet, if you believe their position, somehow that Clinton server had like a special anti-hacking force field.
Everyone else was under assault.
Exactly. Everyone else was under assault. Everyone got breached. Even the CIA had an insider threat, but somehow the Clinton server with its halo had no problems. That's what kind of jumps out at me today.
It jumps out at us, too. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. Good to see you, Catherine. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan says the American Health Care Act is the right way to repeal and replace Obamacare. Here he is today making the pitch.
Lower costs, more choices, not less. Patients in control, universal access to care. These are the four driving principles that we are focused on. Lowering the costs, giving people more choices, having patients in control, and universal access to care. Let me walk you through how exactly we propose to do this.
The Speaker insists he can get the bill through Congress, but apparently a lot of Republican senators did not get that memo. The biggest critic is Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, who says the bill is dead on arrival and will destroy the party in 2020 if it's passed. Senator Paul joins us now. It's good to see you.
Well, you know, he left out a few things in the press conference. He left out that he keeps the Obamacare taxes for a year. Then he keeps the Cadillac tax forever. He keeps the Obamacare subsidies, but renames them, you know, tax credits. He keeps the individual mandate, but you don't pay the government the penalty. You got to pay the insurance company the penalty, and then he also.
But they would say there's a transition.
Well, no, I mean, but he's keeping aspects of Obamacare. That's the very definition of Obamacare life.
So it's not a full repeal, is your point?
No, it's not. And about a year ago, we did. We voted unanimously a year ago. Why aren't we voting on what we voted a year ago?
But I've spoken to House Republicans, and they told me to ask you this simple question. You want to repeal it. What happens after that? You do a full repeal. They say the market collapses, and you really do have a death spiral. And then you, Senator Paul, you own that death spiral.
Yeah, no, I'm for replacing at the same time. But
how do you replace it immediately, though?
Well, in a separate bill. I've read written the bill. And the bill is, interestingly, mostly Tom Price's ideas. So it's interesting that you have Paul Ryan on one side saying, I have Tom Price's ideas, and then you have Rand Paul on the other side saying, I have Tom Price's idea. And it's kind of true. But we don't like the refundable tax credits that came from Tom Price, but we do like health care associations where you can join like a buying pool or a group to bring down prices. This is part of the answer, because the 11 million people in the individual market, their premiums are going through the roof. So you got to let them join a buying pool.
But House Republicans say the premiums are going to spike even more once you repeal it altogether.
Well, that's why you replace it. And what you replace it with are market reforms. We get rid of the mandates, which I think Paul Ryan would agree with. You expand health savings accounts, and then you expand healthcare associations. These associations are like co-ops or buying pools.
All great ideas, but House Republicans also tell me that you can't get to 60 votes with that. So it's not going to go anywhere.
You know, I can't be blamed if somebody won't vote for something. It's not a bad idea.
But how do you bring Democrats in, is their point, to get to 60 votes?
Well, we have to convince people that it's a good idea, and we bring it forward. But the problem is they've brought forward things that are very controversial and that conservatives don't like. Conservatives hate their bill. I promise you, Obamacare Light, dead on arrival. They might as well just start over. You're hearing other voices. I'm not the only voice saying this. And so what they should do is clean it up, get rid of the Obamacare Light stuff, get rid of the taxes, the subsidies, the mandates, the bailouts.
I've pushed you on
just do repeal.
What they say is wrong with your idea. In your support, Republican Senator Tom Cotton today basically agreed with you and said that the House Republicans may wind up with something that's worse than Obamacare. And so the Speaker said, however, you're making a binary choice, Senator. If you don't do this, you're not really following through on the promise to repeal and replace Obamacare.
Let me translate what it means. When someone tells you you have a binary choice, they're telling you take it or leave it. The Speaker needs the Speaker needs to like bring people into the room, conservatives, and needs to hear what we want. We are withholding our vote. This is a message for the Speaker. We are withholding our vote. We want a seat at the table, and it's not a binary choice. If we do not understand why we're in a death spiral with Obamacare, we can't fix it. The reason we're in a death spiral is we're telling people you can buy insurance after you get sick. So guess what? People are waiting to buy it until after they get sick. And that still happens after Paul Ryan's plan. He doesn't fix that problem
But the
at
Vice
all.
President is now going to your home state on Saturday. It sounds like the administration is trying at least to brush you back a little bit. React to that, but also when you say, look, it's not a binary choice, you don't have my vote, Mr. Speaker. You might imperil the Trump presidency.
Well, no, not at all.
Well, what if this all comes crashing down?
I'm a big friend of the president.
But this may come crashing down.
And also, you won't meet anybody who dislikes Obamacare more than me. I'm a physician. I have lived Obamacare. It is a disaster. I have voted to repeal it, and I will vote again. But I will not vote for Obamacare Light stuck on the repeal bill. We're going to have to separate repeal from replace. We have disagreements, serious, fundamental policy disagreements with the Speaker. We're going to have to separate repeal from replacement, or the deal doesn't get done.
Senator Paul making no bones about where he stands tonight. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thanks.
Clearly, there's a long way to go. We're almost 50 days into the Trump presidency. Who's the big winner of the first month and a half? Apparently, First Lady Melania Trump. A new CNN poll finds 52% of Americans have a favorable view of the First Lady. That's 16 points higher than her approval when her husband was inaugurated. She's also a lot more popular than her husband, and 32% of the country disapproves of Melania somehow. 12% have no opinion, and 3% of people apparently live under a rock and have never heard of the First Lady.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning.
Well, President Trump promised a lot of winning, and he's done a bit of it already. The stock market doing great. The economy just added 300,000 jobs in a month, and illegal immigration has dropped sharply, according to some statistics. But if you watch the news, the focus is on President Trump's messes, the troubled executive order on immigration, the never-ending feud over Russia, and much more. Is the Trump administration sneakily off to a good start in achieving its promises? Charles Krauthammer joins us now. Charles, we talked about jobs up, stock market up. Alec Baldwin is even saying he may give up the impression on SNL. He thinks people may get tired of it. You think Alec Baldwin is just tired of all this winning?
Well, I'd say it's a bit premature to declare that we have excessive winning. I will say the stock market and the job market are things that do respond to confidence. There is great confidence that the Republicans being in charge in the House and in the Congress will pass tax reform, lower rates, lower corporate rates, will cut back on regulation, which is the formula for growth. So if you're in the market, it's likely that the economy will grow.
And isn't that tied to Obamacare in the sense that if they get stalled on Obamacare, that's going to push the timetable back on tax reform and tax cuts and could be a real problem?
Which is why these early signs are nice, but they are tenuous. Look, the market is not going to keep climbing indefinitely. I think I can predict with confidence. At some point, it will turn around and go backwards. And at that point, what is Trump going to say? We're going to get tired of losing? So, look, some things are attributable, some things are not. Trump himself tweeted out, I think you heard this from Ben Carlson, the statistic that after a month, the deficit had gone down by $10 billion under him, and under Obama after the first month, it had gone up by $20 billion, which of course is a complete and total irrelevancy.
It fluctuates.
It fluctuates every hour, let alone every month.
But what's your sense now? You mentioned Russia a moment ago, and Sean Hannity had a journalist on last night, Sarah Carter. She's going to come back tonight, so people are going to want to stick around back with Sean, saying that the FBI has been investigating, has found no evidence of collusion between the Russian officials and the Trump campaign. And as you know, James Clapper said much the same in a series of television interviews a few days ago. So what's all the hullabaloo about if the FBI hasn't found anything that's really collusion?
Well, that's, in fact, I asked that question in my column. Here we are about to embark, and we are being completely flooded with news about two accusations. The first is that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians. As you say, there's no evidence for that. You can ask anybody. They'll say, well, there's this, there's that.
There were meetings, there was contact.
But that doesn't mean a thing. A meeting, you know, Flynn had a meeting with the Russian ambassador. Maybe he talked about sanctions. So what? That's his job. The meetings prove nothing. So there is no evidence. They may discover evidence. I'm not saying it's impossible. But as of now, we have this complete frenzy where there's no evidence of collusion. And as you say, James Clapper is not a guy who's sort of having a bromance with Donald Trump. Yeah. They were pretty at each other's throats. Clapper
and
himself.
He headed for the exits quickly when Trump got elected.
Exactly. But Clapper himself, who wrote the report, handed it to Obama when he was leaving, said there's nothing in there to support the
at least not yet,
charge.
As you say, it's still going to play out.
We may find out, but it is a little disproportionate. The other charge, of course, is the Trump charge that Obama had wiretapped him. There is even less evidence on that. So here we are as a country about to go into a rabbit hole, chasing our tails on these issues. Well, perhaps we'll find something. I think the odds are that we're not. And there's a lot happening in the world we ought to be paying attention
and that
to.
Investigation by the FBI is happening not in a vacuum, but as WikiLeaks keeps dumping out more documents that could be very damaging to this country.
I think the current WikiLeaks dump is the worst of all. It's one thing when you leak names, when you leak incidents, that's pretty bad. The Snowden thing. But when you're leaking documents, you're leaking here methods and sources. These are the keys to getting in. These are telling the world how we get into their systems, how we can fake intrusions, all the tricks that we need. And once you release that, then I think our huge technological advantage, which we have, look at what we did in
this is a lot worse than John Podesta making catty comments about Hillary Clinton or reporters, and yet I'm not seeing a lot of Democratic outrage.
Yeah, look, the hypocrisy here is really unbelievable. If your side is being bitten, you get all upset. The other guys are being bitten, like in the campaign. Trump says, I love WikiLeaks. I don't think he loves them today.
Because he's the commander-in-chief who has to deal with the fallout.
This is undermining our entire system. And the other thing it does, apart from everything else, is it exposes Americans to suspicions about the intentions of their own government.
Sure.
Are they listening in on my microwave?
But last question, is there some credence to the suspicion some of our viewers may have when, for example, Judge Napolitano was talking about a report today where Samsung is saying, we care so much about privacy. And then it turns out, well, maybe they allowed British intelligence services to dip into American television sets here with those Samsung smart TVs. So the CIA says, we don't spy on Americans. But did the British intelligence services tap into those TVs? That undermines confidence.
That does. As I said to Judge Napolitano, just a little while ago in special report. Well, in that case, don't talk to your microwave. It's not safe anymore.
Always good advice from Charles Kramer.
Yes.
Don't talk to your microwave.
This is where you come for that. Where else can you get that kind of
key insight? We appreciate
from a psychiatrist, remember.
Thank you, Charles. And after the break, Tucker will be here for his own show. I kid, because we love Tucker. He talks to a Middle Eastern diplomat. Serious story. That diplomat has penned a lengthy letter to his sons about how to be a Muslim in the modern world and not fall prey to radical Islam. Plus, today is the 10th anniversary of a retired FBI agent disappearing in Iran. Far too many people have moved on from the story. We have not. We'll talk to his son for an emotional look at their efforts to bring Robert Levinson home. A growing list of states now joining Hawaii in challenging President Trump's updated travel order affecting 6 Muslim-majority countries. For more, we go back to Trace Gallagher live tonight in Los Angeles. Good to see you, Trace.
Hey, and Hawaii is filing a separate lawsuit against the new Trump travel ban. The other states have decided to jump on board with Washington state. Remember, it was the Washington lawsuit against the first travel ban that led District Judge James Robart to issue a temporary restraining order, halting the ban. A 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals then upheld that restraining order. Now, Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson, joined by Minnesota, Oregon, Massachusetts, and New York, is asking Judge Robart to apply the original restraining order against the new executive order. Here's the AG.
In our view, this new executive order contains many of the same legal weaknesses as the first and reinstates some of the identical policies as the original.
Trump's revised executive order shuts down the U.S. refugee program and bars new visas for people from 6 mostly Muslim countries, including Somalia, Iran, Syria, Libya, Sudan, and Yemen. Hawaii's lawsuit is basically arguing the new travel ban is nearly identical to the old travel ban. The state even cited senior White House policy advisor Stephen Miller, who told Fox News, quote, "In terms of protecting the country, those basic policies are still going to be in effect." Today, the White House said the new order will stand up in court. Listen.
I think we feel very comfortable that the executive order that was crafted is consistent, and we're going to go forward on this.
Now, the old travel ban would be revoked once the new order goes into effect on March 16th, unless, of course, a judge blocks the new order. Ed.
Which would surprise nobody. Trace, appreciate your reporting.
Right.
The president says his second executive order focused on pausing travel from those 6 nations known to have trouble with terror, shows radical Islam is a major concern to this administration and the entire world. Recently, Tucker spoke to Omar Saif Gobash, the ambassador of the United Arab Emirates to Russia. The ambassador recently wrote a book, Letters to a Young Muslim, about what it means to be Muslim in the 21st century and how to avoid the lure of radicalism. Here it is.
Ambassador, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I think the most interesting part of your book, which is excellent, by the way, is the fact that your own children have been exposed to Islamic extremism. You seem like not the candidate for that, not the family for that. Very international. You live outside the Middle East. But even your children have been exposed. What do you tell them?
Well, the first thing I think we have to be aware of is that this is part of, it's simply part of the internet, and it's exposed to, or rather it presents itself in so many different ways through globalization and the technologies that we use. So I actually worried that if my children weren't immune to these ideas, then really all of us are exposed to it. So I had to take a stand of my own, and I put those ideas into the book that I've written.
It seems like most of the spokesmen for moderate Islam that we see, at least on American television, are apostates. They're no longer affiliated with the religion. But you are a Muslim, a practicing Muslim.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you think the criticism is fair that moderate Muslims such as yourself haven't done enough to speak up against extremism?
I used to be one of the moderate Muslims who would say about ourselves that we haven't done enough to speak up about it. The problem here was, and for me personally, was that it's very difficult to kind of latch onto particular ideas. I actually write from the position of a layperson. do not present myself as a theologian, but what I am doing is I am claiming space for lay people and people of good faith to be able to come to the table and speak to the scholars of Islam and speak to the religious authorities and really kind of stake out a new area where we can actually engage in a dialogue between those who claim, this deep religious knowledge and those who simply want to be, sort of good moral, ethical agents as Muslims in the world.
Is there something intrinsic to Islam that produces violent behavior?
No, honestly, I don't think so. I think that there is a certain reading that allows for the violence, but what I think is that it's a particularly narrow and it's a reading that reflects a certain kind of upbringing. And I think that the readings of Islam, whatever reading you're coming out with, is going to be related to the socioeconomic background that you are either coming out of or you were exposed to. So if you look at somebody like Osama bin Laden, he had all of the advantages possible. He had as well a cosmopolitan life. He had this education. He had money, and yet he was looking at the Arab world and said, "Oh, there's this tremendous injustice that's taking place. I must now fight in whatever way he thought he could." Now, that is a particularly worrying example of how things develop. We all sort of are witnesses. The privileged within Arab society or Muslim society are witness to the socio-economic catastrophe of the Arab world in particular, and parts of the Muslim world. And what I want to say is that actually there are much more positive ways in which we can begin to react to that socioeconomic reality. It's people like me and my generation who are very privileged who should be taking steps to alleviate the suffering of fellow Muslims and to really sort of re-establish a semblance of economic kind of well-being and a functioning state in different parts of the Arab world and North Africa.
So can a Muslim who takes his religion seriously, an Orthodox Muslim, be tolerant of people who aren't Orthodox Muslims?
I think it's. I know many Orthodox Muslims who are quite happy to accept that the world is full of many different nationalities and cultures and religious faiths. So not only do they tolerate, those of weak faith within Islam, but they're quite happy to accept that there are non-Muslims in the world. So again, these are particular readings, and I think that what we need to do is there is, I believe, a silent majority of Muslims who really believe in a much more productive engagement with the modern world. Now, do they have the theological arguments? Do they have the philosophical arguments to kind of stand up to the incredible pressure put on them by the radicals? This is a different question, and that's the kind of contribution that I was trying to make, that there must be a set of arguments, kind of rules of thumb for how to push back against the very strong radical, small but very strong radical kind of interpretations.
And thank you for providing that. That's obviously necessary. Thanks, Ambassador, for joining us.
Thank you.
10 years ago today, U.S. citizen and former FBI agent Bob Levinson disappeared while inside Iran. The Iranian government claims it is not holding him. According to the Associated Press, Levinson was involved in a CIA operation which his family disputes. They've accused President Bush and Obama of abandoning him, but perhaps this new administration will be different. And today, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer signaled that determining Levinson's fate is a top priority.
Finally, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that today is the 10-year anniversary of the disappearance of former FBI agent Robert Levinson from Kish Island, Iran. The Trump administration remains unwavering in our commitment to locate Mr. Levinson and bring him home. The Levinson family has suffered far too long, and we will not rest until his case is resolved.
Dan Levinson is Bob's son. He joins us now live, and in fact, you have 6 siblings.
Yes.
So big family. Mm-hmm. Walk me through this. This has to be a tough day.
It absolutely is, but we're optimistic now. I thought today when I woke up that I just want to get this day over with, but we have a job to do. We're trying to get him home. So we're optimistic with this new administration, and we're hopeful after hearing statements like this.
You told me that Senator Marco Rubio has been helping you, and you're hoping to get him actually get a meeting with President Trump. Talk about that.
Yes, we're hoping to get the message to President Trump that if there's one issue that he's so well suited for, it's this one, to get my dad home, because he has talked about helping take care of people who have been serving their country. He's talked about being tough with America's adversaries. And he's talked about, the fact that he's previously talked about this, where he's It said that Iran knows exactly where he is. He has no qualms about being aggressive with them. And the thing is, he's a deal maker, and this is going to require a deal. So we're hopeful that these skills...
And it involves an American that he wants to stand up for.
Absolutely. So I think this is an enormous opportunity for President Trump to do something that 2 previous U.S. presidents haven't done.
And do you think President Obama didn't do enough because of the Iran nuclear deal and he was trying to get favor with them?
I think that is one of those issues, and I think that it wasn't. He had said many times over the years that it was a top priority, but he had 8 years to get him out, and he didn't. I think the biggest issue with that, though, is he's never aggressive with the Iranians. He never issued threats of repercussions for them for their inaction. So we know that President Trump has no qualms about doing that, threatening sanctions, threatening to label the Iranian Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization. So we're hoping that he's going to be.
Let's talk about Iran, because your family put out a statement, and as I read it, sometimes statements can be simple, straightforward. There's tough words in here. And I understand your pain, obviously, and it's probably coming from there. You say for 10 years, the government of Iran has been allowed to dodge and weave every time it was asked to come clean about what happened to Bob and send him home. Where is the outrage of this treatment of an American citizen? Start with that.
Well, the Iranian government arrested my dad. They've held him for 10 years and without any basic human rights. And this is an American citizen, and there should be outrage around the world. And they've been getting away with it. And this is unbelievable that it's been this long, and that I'm still coming out here and having to plead to get action and to.
When we just had the Iranians at the table on the nuclear deal.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that was an enormous opportunity that was squandered as well.
And another part of the statement caught my eye. You say, even Bob's government co-workers and their bosses, they know who they are, ran away when he disappeared to their lasting shame.
Yeah, that was. And the ensuing weeks after he first went missing, there were mistakes made. We're trying to move past that. It's an issue to be addressed in the future, but we're focused on getting them home, and we can deal with the repercussions of that.
I don't want to
later.
dwell on that, but for context for our viewers who want to see your dad come home, you've denied that he was involved in a CIA mission, but what are you referring to generally when you say there were people who abandoned him? What was he doing there?
Well, he was working for the CIA as a contractor, and there are the people who were tasked with working with him. They denied it at first and lied to federal investigators at the FBI about his ties. So that was a big issue for us, and it's just there's so many complex aspects to this, and the focus for us is that the Iranians really have denied everything since.
I can't even imagine your anger when I think about what the Iranian government has done with these stalling, what previous administrations have done, but then mixed with the emotion of just sadness and so much sorrow. How does your family deal with it?
My mom had told us from the onset, take it one day at a time. We've got to focus on our lives while also working to get him home. He's missed so much. He's missed several weddings. He has 2 grandchildren on the way, several that he hasn't ever met with. And that's tough when our family's all together because we have a big family and it's a happy time. But
so what gives you hope after, as the last question, after all this time, some people might have given up hope and said too much time has passed. What still gives you hope?
I get it. 10 years, someone's missing and you haven't heard. But we fully believe he's alive. The FBI investigators who are involved in the case on a daily basis believe he's alive. People survive 10-year prison sentences all the time. He's relatively young. He's going to be 69 tomorrow. And he has a lot to come home to. And they think that the 2 most pressing health issues he has, diabetes, hypertension, those can be resolved with a limited, staple diet that he's eating over there.
Dan, we hope he comes home very soon. And we're certainly not going to turn away from the story. Tucker's committed to it, and so is Fox.
Thank you so much.
Best to your family. And now it's time for Twitter Storm, our nightly forecast of social media's most powerful weather patterns. A month ago, Lindsay Lohan was in the news due to rumors she was converting to Islam. Now she's back for the much more mundane reason that she wants Disney to give her a job. She tweeted, "Disney, let's do Freaky Friday and Herbie sequels. Retweet if you want this." Some people were enthusiastic, others less so. Jason R. Adams tweeted, "She's desperate for work and craving attention. She got a little by saying she was racially profiled for wearing a hijab." Chastity Montgomery said, "Your career ended after Mean Girls. Stop trying." Ooh, harsh. Though I will note, Chastity, Mean Girls is the greatest chick flick of all time. Just saying. Jake Giles tweeted, "Screw that. I want Parent Trap 2. No, Jake, just no. And Lamore said, succinctly, "This is really sad." Nailed it. And that is tonight's Twitter Storm. That's about it for us tonight. Tucker will be back in this seat tomorrow. Tune in every night at 9 to the show that is the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Also, don't forget, DVR our show. Hannity is up next.